Hello, and good morning or good evening, whenever it is you happen to be watching this. What we're going to do today is we're going to be color coding and putting information on a periodic table to make it easy for you to determine electron arrangements within atoms. Now, what you're going to need for this is, of course, a periodic table that you've either printed out or you've been given. You're going to need a pencil or pen, something very, very sharp with a fine tip on it. And then you're going to need 7 different either colored pencils or crayons. I went ahead and went with just the standard Roy G. Biv. See if I can get them in order here. There we go. But you can use whichever 7 colors. I would recommend you use 7 that you don't hate. So anyway, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to label some of the regions of the periodic table. We're going to start with the 2 columns down here. We're going to put a little bracket on them. And we're going to label these 2 columns the S block. Okay, S as in snake. And we're going to come over to the last 6 columns on the top half here. I'm going to put a little bracket on them. And we're going to label them the P block. Okay, don't know how well you can see that. P block right there. Now for this next part here, I'm going to come up to the top. And I'm going to label these 10 columns here that go across the canyon. I'm going to call those my D block. And then we're going to come all the way down here to the bottom, and we're going to get these folks that are here at the bottom. Put a little bracket underneath them. We're going to end up calling this down here the F block. Not to be confused with the F bomb. That's something very different. So you should have at this point S block for the 2 first columns, D block for the 10 columns that go across the middle, P block for the 6 on the end, and again F block for the 7 across the bottom. We're going to add a little more information to a few places on the table, and I'm going to come up here to the side of this first column, and I'm going to write just up in the corner here where I've got a little bit of room. I'm going to write 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s. So just 1 through 7s is going to go in those right there. Now I'm going to come over to scandium and yttrium right here. And besides scandium, I'm going to write 3d. Beside yttrium, I'm going to write 4d. Now I'm going to come down here to hafnium, and I'm going to write, actually hold on, I'm not going to put it on hafnium. I'm going to come down to the bottom right here, lutetium and lawrencium, and I'm going to label lutetium 5d, lawrencium 6d. Okay, don't know how well you can see that. I'm going to come over here to lanthanum and actinium, and I'm going to label those 4F 5F. Okay, so 4F, 5F. Then I'm going to come over here to the column underneath boron. And I'm going to start up here with boron, and I'm going to label this 2P, 3P, 4P, 5P, 6P, and 7P. Now, if you need to pause and go back and take a look at any of those before we go on, this would be a great time to do that. If you've got those, then we're going to add one more thing before we proceed to our color coding. We're going to come up here to the top of this first column right here. And we're going to be adding a little bit of numbering to this periodic table because this periodic table still uses the old system of numbering for groups, the 1A, 2A, 3B, 4B. We're going to go and we're going to put the modern system in on top of each of these columns. So do what I do. Up here at the top of 1A, we're just going to put a 1. Above that, I'd like you to put an X. Then you're going to put a single dot up on top of that X. Right here, we're going to put the number 2. And then we're going to put an X. And now I want you to put 2 dots up on top of that X. Take my word for this, it'll make more sense later. You're going to then also take an arrow, you're going to draw it down, and point it toward where you've got labeled D block. Now we're going to continue numbering these. We're going to call this right here group 3, group 4, 5. Really should have planned this out a little bit better. Group 6. You know what? I'm going to move that real quick, just to give myself a little bit more room. I could have just as easily written them in underneath the bracket and that would have been fine, I'm sure. But this is why I like using pencil, because I make a lot of mistakes. So I'm going to continue on. We're going to call this group 6, 7, 8. And we're going to continue. We're going to call this 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, wouldn't you know it, they went and put stuff in the way here. So we're going to come up above all of this mess here. And I'm going to call this group 13. Now, above this, I want you to put another X. But this time, you're going to keep the original pair of dots, and you're going to put another dot on one of the sides. Over this column here, we're going to call this group 14. I'm going to go back with our original pair of dots. We're going to have a single dot where we had it a minute ago, and we're going to add another dot to one of the other sides. It really doesn't matter which. Now I'm going to drop back down. Oh, I'm not. I'm going to keep it up here. Might as well keep it straight. Call this group 15. Now for my X on this one, I'm going to have my pair of dots, and then I'm going to put a single dot on each of the sides. Then I'll come over to this column here. We're going to call this group 16. This time we're going to go with our original pair of dots, and then we're going to put a pair of dots on one of the other sides, leaving the other two single. This will be group 17. Pair of dots, and now we're going to add another pair of dots. And leave one of the sides with just a single. At this point, if you've been paying attention, you might have been clued in that these dots actually represent the valence electrons, because you should know at this point that this group right here, column 17, these are the halogens, and they have 7 valence electrons. And then we're going to come out here finally to group 18, and our X on the top of this is going to have 4 pairs of dots. Now you might be able to do a slightly neater job of things than I did. In fact, I'd highly encourage you to do a slightly neater job than what I did here. But now we're ready to start adding some color. And you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to either hit with another color or hit with a highlighter some of my new little group numbers here, just to make sure those stand out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first of my colors. I'm going to be boring and I'm going to start with red. Now, to make sure that everything inside of here stays legible, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of outline the square itself. So I'm going to sort of outline this with a little line of red. If you would prefer to shade yours in, just be sure that you can still read everything that's on the inside. And I'm going to use that same color of red, and I'm going to come over here to helium, and I'm going to put a border around helium. I'm going to come back real quick, and in the space out to the left, right beside this, I'm going to use the same color red. I'm going to put a big red number 1. Okay, now we're done with our red. I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to go to my next color. I'm going to use orange. And I'll go ahead and start with my number here. I'm going to put a big number 2 right out here beside lithium. Uh-oh. I got that one crayon that's not going to stay out for me. So big number 2. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to put a border on lithium. And then right beside it, beryllium. Now at this point, some people are going to be getting impatient with me. Usually those people are going to be the people who would rather get this done with so they can go back to sleep, or my honors kids who are in a rush to show how smart they are. Don't get ahead. If you get ahead, you're going to mess up and you're going to kick yourself later, so stick with me. Okay? If you're really bored and you're watching this later, you can always hit fast forward. Now I'm going to come across the gap here, and I'm going to get all the rest of the elements in this row here, boron down through neon. Actually, if it was me watching this, I would probably knock this up to about double speed at this point, because I'm one of those people who gets bored easily. Hopefully by just doing borders, this will save you some time, because I know for some of you who are, Picasso level artists, it took you forever to color all the elements on the other side of this. And yes, we'd like this to be attractive, but really we want this to be functional. We want to be able to use it as a quick information reference. Oh, that reminds me, there is one more thing that we want to add to this. Okay, don't forget to remind me when we're at the end, whoever it is that's actually watching this. You're gonna have to scream really loud though, because you're gonna have to shout back through time for me to hear. I feel a little bit like Bob Ross with less talent and not as awesome hair. So now we're done with our entire second row here. Let me zoom back out, and I'm going to set my orange aside. We're done with it. I'm going to go in with my third color. In this case, I'm choosing yellow. I'm going to start by putting a 3 right here. Now here's where it's going to start to get weird, okay? So stick with me. I am going to use that yellow to outline sodium and magnesium. But I'm going to drop down to scandium, and I'm going to do the same with scandium over through zinc. They're also going to get this yellow outline. Try and speed it up just a little bit here. So if anybody knows any good knock-knock jokes or blonde jokes, this is a great place to put them. Maybe just to keep this from being boring, I'll hunt through the YouTube music library and see if I can find some public domain music. Now don't get too excited and do what I almost did and keep on going. Stop with zinc, and then we're going to bounce back up, and we're going to continue with the same color. We're going to do aluminum through argon. The British call this aluminium, and they actually spell it with an extra I in the name. Sort of like how they spell the word color with an extra U. I remember hearing someplace, and I'm not sure how accurate this is, that Americans were so eager to sort of cast off a lot of the Britishness of things after the American Revolution that they deliberately started spelling certain words differently than our old friends across the pond. I don't know how much of that is true and how much of it is just spelling was less important to folks, and so there were several ways to spell things, and certain ones caught on over here that, whoops, never caught on back over there. Okay, we're finally done with color number 3. Again, get that back in focus. We've got 3, and we've got it set up like that. Now I'm going to take color 4, and orange, yellow, green. So I'm going to use this nice green right here, kind of olive green. Outside potassium, I'm going to write a 4. Make sure I can read that. And I'm going to outline potassium and calcium. I'm going to drop down, and I'm going to outline yttrium through cadmium. So that's a shame, because speaking of Bob Ross, he always used, I think it was cadmium yellow was one of his favorite colors to paint with, and we're going to end up putting green on cadmium, which, I don't know, just seems wrong somehow. Don't tell Bob what I did. So who in here has never heard of Bob Ross? I'm curious. Oh, don't bother raising your hand, I can't see you right now. If you have no idea who Bob Ross is, you really need to do yourself a favor and seek out some of his stuff. He used to have a TV show on PBS called The Joy of Painting, and it is one of the most chill half hours of television you're ever going to run into. He was doing satisfying YouTube videos, several decades before there was a YouTube. Highly recommend you check him out. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Bob Ross. If you don't like Bob Ross, please don't tell me. I don't want to know. Okay, and here's cadmium, which shouldn't be green, but there we are. We're going to bounce up, and we're going to color gallium through krypton with that same color. But we're not going to be done here. And those of you who are very observant may have already noticed, hey, all those things he had us write down a while ago, like the 1s and the 2s and the 2p and the 3s, those are all electron sublevels. And all the ones that start with 3, he had us write with yellow, and all the ones that start with 4, he had us write with green, which means we're going to drop down here to the lanthanides, and we're going to color all of them on this row except for lutetium. We're going to leave lutetium blank for now. I'm actually going to go ahead and get ytterbium, so I remember not to go past that, but I'm going to come back now. I'll try and do this a little bit quicker. Some of you may have already figured out that if you are very careful, you can sort of do a big old chunk of border like that, and the same across the top. You do have to be careful. And then come back and sort of help reinforce some of the border in between the two boxes. It does speed things up quite a bit. Again, I can hear some of my more OCD students totally freaking out that I'm doing it like this. Just breathe deeply. It's all going to be over soon. And there we go. So now we're done with color number 4, just kind of doing a big zoom out so we can see everything in there. Oh, kind of missed a spot there. That's better. Be a good idea to keep these map pencils or crayons handy, so if you need to go back and do some touch-up, you know which ones you used. We're going to set green to the side. We're going to move on to color number 5, which we're going to use this nice pretty blue. I'm going to put a blue 5 out here beside rubidium. And here things are going to get a little more familiar. I'm going to go ahead and hit rubidium and strontium. I need to be sure I can still read where I've written 5s right there. That's kind of important. If I need to, I might come back and sort of re-hit that with pencil, just to kind of make it stand out some. Now, don't color this square right here. Leave this square 57 through 71 blank. Okay? And I will show you why here in just a minute, but we're going to get hafnium up through mercury. Go ahead and put myself a stop here at the end of mercury so I know that's where I need to quit. I don't know why I didn't think of doing that before. That's a lot faster. It still looks just fine. Oh, that was a little fat. That's not pretty. That's okay. Remember, this is above all a tool. It's not a work of art. We're making a useful tool here. I'm going to jump up and I'm going to do indium through xenon, the same color. Again, at any time you can always pause this and go back and watch it as fast or as slow as you need to. Or if you are sitting in a classroom with a substitute teacher watching you color, you can ask him or her to pause. Okay, so that's up there. Now we're going to come down and we're going to come back and we're going to hit lutetium, which we skipped a while ago with our blue. And we're going to drop down and do this bottom row, actinium through nobelium, but we're going to leave lawrencium off for right now. So we're going to stop. Go ahead and put up a barrier at 102. We'll get this bottom row. Back and hit the borders in between. I really do hope my microphone's picking all of this up, because it would be a real shame if you had to do all of this without listening to the beautiful sound of my voice. Alright, so zooming back out, we've got our blues in for our 5. So now we can set blue aside. I'm going to go to my 6th color, which I'm choosing to call indigo. It looks like kind of a reddish, pinkish purple. And you may have, actually, I'm going to skip color number 6 right now, and I'm going to go on to color number 7, which is my final color, because this is going to be fairly fast. Yeah, let's go ahead and skip. No, let's not. I don't want to confuse anybody. I'll probably cut that out. But if you're hearing me say this, you know I didn't. Let's go ahead and do 6. Sure we can read it. Okay. 6 is going to be cesium and barium. And then we're going to drop down. We're going to skip that square right there, and we're going to get rutherfordium all the way through. What is Cn? Element number 112. I really should know. Copernicum! Wait, Copernicum? Copernicium, named for Nicholas Copernicus. We've been talking about him in astronomy lately. Copernicus, yeah, you can tune me out right now if you don't care. Copernicus was one of the first people in what we call the modern era to suggest that our solar system is heliocentric instead of geocentric, which means that the stars revolve, I'm sorry, not the stars, the planets, including Earth, all revolve around the sun, whereas the going wisdom up until his time was that everything revolved around the Earth, which we now know is silly and we now know is not true, but for thousands of years, all the way back to the ancient Greeks, that was what everyone thought happened. So we're going to come over, we're going to get, I always get this one, thallium through radon, over here in the P block. How are we doing on time? We're right at about 30 minutes. We're doing great on time. The program I use to take my videos is started limiting me to either 40 or 45 minutes, I forget which, but we shouldn't have any trouble getting this done before then. And then we're going to come down, and let's not forget about little Lawrencium. We're going to use our number 6 color to get him. Okay. So that's all we're going to need out of color number 6. I'm going to use my last color now, which is this nice dark purple. And pretty much we're going to get whatever we have left, which is going to be francium and radium. Over here, let's go ahead and put a number 7. Oh, that is dark. You need to be careful not to get it too dark around what I'm trying to read. This is another one of those crayons that keeps wanting to roll itself back up inside the barrel. And then we're going to use that same color and come over here through element 113 out through number 118. Okay. I don't know if at this time in history if 113 has a official approved name. Looks like 114 and 117 both do. 116. 116 I know is Livermorium, named for, I think, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I should know who Lawrence Livermore is. I really don't. Probably one of the gaping holes in my education there. Alright, so at this point we have everything color coded. Now I said we were going to add one more thing, and then we're going to go back and we're going to hit some stuff with some highlights. So I'm going to now see if I can swap over to a red pen. It turns out I couldn't find a red pen, so I found this interesting purple pen here, and that should do the trick for me. I'm going to zoom in back up at the top of my chart again, and in the space that I have over my little X with the dots on it, over this first column, I'm going to write a little +1. And over this one, I'm going to write a little +2. I'm going to come over here, over boron, over group 13, I'm going to write +3. Now here's where things get weird. Over group 14, the one that's got carbon in it, I'm going to write +/-, make sure you can read that plus there, 4. And then I'm going to start going back downhill. I'm going to call over group 15, that's -3, -2, -1, and then over the noble gases, I'm going to put 0. Okay, that of course has to do with something called oxidation. It's a way that we can predict what kind of charge an element's going to have whenever it forms bonds. We'll get to that soon. Only thing left for me to do is to come back and maybe hit some of my stuff with highlights, things that I want to be sure that I don't miss. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to use this yellow highlighter to highlight my new group numbers. (13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18). In fact, I might even put myself in a little key here. I'm going to write group number. I'm going to hit that with that same color highlighter so I know that that's what that refers to. I think I'll take a different color highlighter, maybe this blue one here. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit the labels for my blocks. And so I've got my S block, my D block, my F block down at the bottom, and then over here on the side, my P block. And if you want to, you can even try and get in there and you can try and highlight your brackets. I'm not going to do that because I think I'll mess something up if I do. And I'm going to write block / sublevel. Zoom in where you can see what I did there. I'm going to hit that with that same blue highlighter. And then you know what? Just because I feel like having fun, I'm going to get a green highlighter here. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit all of these little dot symbols that I made. So I'm going to, in fact, I'll just draw some little boxes around these. I might fill in my boxes, I might not. I don't know yet. And I'm going to write the phrase dot diagram. Go ahead and highlight that with that same color green there. Gosh, is there anything else we can pack onto this thing? I tell you what, that is a darn attractive piece of work right there. I think the only thing that it's still lacking is my name, so I know it's mine and nobody else can take it. So I'm going to put it right up here at the top. I'll go ahead and put a little copyright in there. I don't know why, you know, it makes me feel more professional. But there you go, you've now color-coded the back side of your periodic table, and I can't wait until we get a chance to talk about all of the really interesting things we're going to be able to do with it. I will see you soon. Thanks for watching.